All right. Title of this video is called Stop the Cap. So why am I calling Stop the Cap? Well, there's a number of different reasons. As it relates to the travel community, I see within the forums, Passport Bro forums, further discussion and discourse on the YouTube world, there's a lot of truths, half truths, and just misinformation altogether. Particularly what inspired this video was a discussion recently on a number of different podcasts or YouTube channels discussing Africa. Particularly with regards, there was a recent video on about on the BMT platform with a young man discussing, gentleman discussing Africa, um, the pros and cons, and it was a rebuttal to another YouTuber, Skylar, when he was discussing the pros and cons of Africa. In my opinion, Africa is beautiful. The Mother Africa is, where we all come from, and it should be acknowledged and revered for its position as a cradle of civilization. All human beings descend from Africa, whether they want to admit it or not. Currently, the human organism is suffering from cognitive dissonance. Uh, on all the pseudoscience inspired racial divisions. But scientists from Western Europe to Africa all agree that human life started and began in Africa. The original human being was the black woman. The black woman, hence the name woman, it descends from the term womb, which is the womb that human beings come from out of the Stargate, and man. So hence the name woman and then man. And the origins, as currently respected, is being stated that human beings started with the woman named Lucy in Ethiopia, thousands upon thousands of years ago, eons ago, if you will. So Ethiopia is considered where human life began, and it was a black woman. And then from that, some say asexual being came man and woman, and the rest is history. And then also the Christian belief, which is that obviously God created us all, and you had Adam and Eve and so forth, and came the beginning of civilization. So, and again, that started in Africa too. And they were black people, not white people, not beige people, not light skinned people, but black people. So there's always this like discussion about Africa and about, um, especially as a black person, bigging up Africa, going back to the motherland, and talking about the positive, because so much negativity, especially by a lot of Western powers since colonialism, has been to degrade Africa. Once the Moorish people were kicked out of the Iberian Peninsula by the Spanish, I believe King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, they ran a crusade, the Christian crusade, to kick out the Islamic black people, the Moorish people, who conquered and ruled that part of the Europe, Spain, and then southern France, which is now called southern France, or the Gaul people. In the early to late 1400s, they culminated with the removal of the Moorish people. There's been this push to vilify blackness. Everywhere you go is like you will see all the riches all around the world with the black people, the gold, the silver, and black people didn't look at it from a standpoint of hoarding these resources, but those that took over did. They had a superiority complex because they felt inferior, uh, and with that came about a vilification of blackness. I think due to that, to this day, a lot of black people make it a point to focus on the positive, which is excellent. But you had to talk about the truths. And with that, in the travel community, a lot of people, a lot of brothers go to Africa. So I'm looking for a wife. Some looking for a new beginning. Some looking for acceptance and a place that they can call home. As many parts of the world, they like us for our music and our ingenuity and our creations on the planet, but they hate us because we have more hue in our skin than them, which is asinine in nature and just plain stupid. But again, as I stated earlier, the human organism is going through a cognitive dissonance, a delusion of grandeur, where they focus on the outside instead of the inside or the energy that one emits. So I state all that because it's good to talk about the good, but it's also necessary to talk about the frank. In the aforementioned podcast, Skylar, he mentioned that, why he wouldn't return to Africa, and that it had a lot of issues there, and so forth, the beauty of the women, and so forth. A lot of that's subjective, but what's not subjective is certain other issues, namely the STD rate, the HIV rate. Now, how did that HIV come to Africa? That's a discussion for another day. But be that as it may, HIV is very high all throughout Africa. I went to several places, particularly Kenya, one of my last stops in Africa. And one thing I noticed from the doctor I met on the plane to other people I talked to locally, they all warned me about being mindful of the HIV issue in Africa. HIV is a disease that is at this time. Some people say once you get it, you're done. You have it for life. It breaks down the immune system and eventually leads to death. It has been a big issue all throughout Africa. There's been lessons on contraception and so forth. But because of the issues there, it was explained to me very much so by the locals to be mindful of that and who you deal with. And then when I did my further research, I saw that the top 10 to 40 countries in the world, outside of maybe Russia and Thailand and Brazil, of having AIDS was all in Africa. Now, obviously, as a single man, that probably would give you second thoughts, right? And that's very logical because one wants to be mindful of their health and they don't want to put their health at risk. So with that, I think that a lot of brothers skim over that. The gentleman that spoke on BMT program talked about it only being an issue in South Africa, but it really is an issue all throughout the continent. And this can be a simple Google search can tell you that. This is even the locals in Kenya told me that. Another thing is the poverty issue. Hold on a second, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So another thing is the poverty. So Africa, from the west to the east, which is where I've been. I haven't actually been down to the south. I've been to Morocco, so technically the north. However, I have not been down to the south. But at least in the east and the west, poverty is a major issue, particularly in the countries of Tanzania, Kenya, Ghana, the Gambia, especially, and then also Senegal. A lot of times I saw kids with dirt on their face begging for money, bugs everywhere around a lot of the kids' faces in Senegal in particular. A lot of the infrastructure was more run down and shot worn. Also, in addition to that, there wasn't a lot of culinary options. I've heard that that's obviously not the case in places like South Africa, which I had no interest in going to because of the racial divide of the evil white people that's there that hurt the black people in their own country and teach them to hate one another. I'm not with that shit. So I have no interest in going there. But also Morocco, when I was there, it seemed like they had a lot of different options for cuisine. But the sub-Saharan countries seemed like they were they were lacking in different options. In the East, in Tanzania and Kenya, they had a number of different culinary options with Indian food because a lot of Indians are coming here, who many of them are racist bigots. But it was kind of limited, if you will. And when you factor in the poverty rate, the kids begging, the infrastructure, and then the different options in food, one needs to be mindful of that, especially if you come from the West, that you may not have the creature comforts that you're used to. And it might not be easy to get those creature comforts as it would in the West, or even in some of the Far East countries, like in certain parts of Asia, even Thailand, especially Japan and so forth, South Korea. Um, let's see. Another thing is that uh, the hospitals. Now, I don't. I think that whenever you travel, you need to be mindful of the hospitals. How good are they? Are you in a safe place? Um, do you have a medical emergency plan? These things are very important because uh, if anything was to ever happen, you want to be in a place where you know that you can bug out properly in a safe, healthy manner if you get injured or things of that nature. I think, with the aforementioned issue of infrastructure, I think one will come into potential complications. Like when I was in Senegal, for instance, one of the hotel managers I talked to, because a lot of Senegalese people, they go to France because they speak French. They told me that a lot of times they go to France just to get better healthcare because healthcare is not good. In the past, I've done martial arts with some individuals from Nigeria who stated that they, it's such a blessing to be in America because just the hospital system there isn't up to par. A lot of this stuff you had to be mindful of. There's a reason why Francis Ngannou risked it all to cross the Sahara Desert from Cameroon to get to the Iberian Peninsula and then eventually to France. And that's because the life that he had in Cameroon didn't match up to that. The opportunities didn't match up to that. And there's tons of Black people from Africa have done this. They went to UK and France. Unfortunately, they started having a big head because the kids start having a big head. The parents don't, because they were the ones that pushed to get their kids to a better life, but then the kids get the big head, similar to African Americans, where they start thinking they overcame and then they had to march in the street when one of them gets killed. But and they can't really do nothing about it because the system of white supremacy. But there's a reason why people are willing to risk it all, like Francis Ngannou, and that's because the opportunity in these countries is not good for many. You think the poverty is bad in parts of Latin America. Take a look at Africa. I mean, I went through several countries and there was no really nice part of town. There was a safe part of town with decent infrastructure, but it wasn't really overly nice. Even in Westlands in Nairobi, it's nice. Like you see a lot of guys like Austin Holland, you see where they're staying and so forth. And I'm familiar with their area that they're staying in, but it's nice. But guys, I mean, to be honest, it's not that developed. Now, it's been about 12 minutes so far. I want to make it a point because it can seem like the person that's talking is going on a tangent where he's just being a negative Nancy. It's not about being a negative Nancy. I'm Black. I'm proud to be Black. Blacks have been dealing with for the past 600-700 years because of jealousy of the recessive people of the planet. But we had to talk about what brought about the destruction of Africa. Dictators, presidents selling himself out for a cup of coffee. Everybody says it's about colonialism, and colonialism to this day still plays a role, right, in Africa. But also, it's Africans sticking together, just like with African Americans. Selling what is in America, in the American country, United States, where the governor or the mayor, Black mayor, sells his people out for trinkets. Same thing in Africa, where the president or the other top leaders sell themselves out for a cup of coffee. And so that's what's led to this economic downturn. I mean, Africa has the most resources on the planet, but majority of people are struggling. That doesn't make any sense, guys. And so to glance over that and just say, oh, well, the media is bad. It shows just kids with bugs on their face. Bro, I was there. There was kids with bugs on their face. And it's sad. And I don't think that as a Black man, as an educated Black man or woman, doing the whole Sadiddy bit, that shit got to end. Let's talk real. Let's talk realism. Let's be real. Okay. There's a lot of poverty in Africa. Even in Nairobi, which is considered a top tier place for foreigners to travel to. Yeah, because relatively speaking, it's safe, but still, it's very poor there. It's very poor. And to not discuss that, to just say, oh, well, it's Skylar or this guy, he doesn't like Black women. Maybe he don't. I don't know. I don't know that man. He's a YouTube person. That's most I know about him. But the glance over the poverty issue, the glance over the STD rate issue, to glance over the corruption issue is no different than when you see these guys with these tens in Colombia and Brazil, and they're just saying they're pulling them no prepago. Come on now, it's and they speak they speak no Spanish. They speak no Spanish whatsoever. That no hablo español, pero they got a super hot Latina and she don't speak no English. How does that add up, right? How does it add up when you see Africans running literally from Africa to get a better life, but then you're saying Africa is the best ever? These things gotta be talked about, man. And it's good to talk about the good, but you got to talk about the truth too. And sometimes the truth isn't the most pleasant, and it's an inconvenient truth. First West African country I went to, Senegal. I had a particular spiritual reason I went there. It was a pilgrimage of sorts for me. There's a statue, the African Renaissance, of a man with his wife and his kid in the air. And the president at the time in 2010 of Senegal, he created that. He hired several individuals, architects from North Korea, to help in building that monument to be symbolic, the largest monument in all Africa. And the whole purpose of that was for Africans, whether you're in Africa, whether you are in Panama, whether you're in Brazil, whether you're in the United States of America, UK, France, take full responsibility for your actions and your position in life. No slave mentality, no BS, no, I got mine, you got to get yours. No, I'm talented 10th. Take full responsibility for your position in life and make the most of it and be honest about it. And that's what we got to promote. That's what we got to be about. We got to talk about the good. We got to talk about how the women are beautiful. Black women, anatomically speaking, are the most attractive women on the planet. I was in Europe. All the European girls trying to get full lips like a black girl. In Latin America, the Latinas or the Mestizo people, they trying to get the big asses like the black girls, right? I'm in Asia recently, and the girls, they want to have the eyelashes, they want to have the hair, they want to have the hair like the black girls, right? It's everybody wants to, be cool. And, what group of people is considered the face of cool? Black people, right? They created all the popular music, reggaeton, mariachi. And a lot of people don't even know that. Obviously hip hop, reggae, dancehall, soca, rock and roll, jazz, popular music in general. Who created really the black man and the black woman, right? So everybody wants that. They want that coolness, even though they run around the planet hating their genetic parents, which is just self-hate at its highest form. But be that as it may, everybody wants to be in with that. But we got to talk about that. But we also got to talk about the dark side of it all. We got to talk about, why wasn't those ships investigated that came to the coastlines in the 1500s from Portugal? Why wasn't it just free trade? Why would you sell your people to these people and you don't know who they are, right? Or your opponents in your opponent tribe, you would sell their people to these people from Europe that you don't know nothing about. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about how, we got to talk about the Berlin Convention. We got to talk about how Africa was carved up, unbeknownst to the Africans, which European country is going to take over different parts of Africa. We got to talk about the Manek II, if I'm not pronouncing the name right, the great warrior from Ethiopia that fought off and staved off colonialism by the Italian forces in the late 1800s. We got to talk about the legendary Haile Selassie, the last monarch who was the catalyst for prevention of colonialism in the only country that wasn't colonized in all of Africa, Ethiopia. And unfortunately, as people, they say he did good, but then he say he did bad, and they turned their back on him. And then they went with this group called the Dirt, and lo and behold, the Dirt was run by the Russians. We gotta talk about that. We can't just talk about, don't talk bad about Africa. Don't talk. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the danger. Let's talk about the STD rate. Let's just put it out on the table. Because the only way you're gonna solve the problem is to talk about it. But if you say, "Oh, you hating on me, you're being negative," bro, we ain't, we not women here. We got to be honest, okay? Like nah, we not pacifists here. Because we not gonna solve no problem being pacifists. You're gonna solve problems having the spirit of the Maroons from Jamaica. You're gonna solve problems having the energy and the drive and the force of a Marcus Garvey. You're gonna solve problems having that fierce warrior spirit like Haile Selassie. When the whole planet turned his back on him, he was fighting the greatest forces at that time known to man, and he whooped them. He beat them. He outsmarted them. I thought Africans weren't that smart. I guess they were pretty smart, huh? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the women are beautiful, but it's poverty there. So just like in Colombia, girls are getting it any which way they can. In Nigeria, you have, like they told me in Ghana, a lot of prostitution, a lot of scamming going on in Nigeria. But let's talk about the positive too. Let's talk about all the great Nigerian warriors. Let's talk about all the rich, well-off Nigerians. Let's talk about, like Jabril, I believe he's, from that part of Africa. Let's talk. He's a popular YouTuber who posts his videos from time to time. Let's talk about the image that he promotes. Let's talk about all of it. Let's talk about all of it, the good and the bad. Because when you talk about the good and the bad, then you can travel to Africa with your eyes wide open and keep your head on a swivel, but you know what to look out for. Remember when with Colombia, right? There was all this talk. Oh, Colombia, you can do this, that. It's not like Pablo Escobar days. Oh no, we're pulling these regular girls, right? And come to find out these guys are paying for these women, right? They're not actually pulling them. And then guys go there looking for a regular girl and they get scopolamine and killed. Then because the US government, travel.gov, basically mandated, hey, if you're going there, don't use online dating apps. It's not sweet there. Then now the YouTubers started talking about, okay, yeah, a lot of these guys, this is trickling. But just a few years ago, everybody was acting like it was all sweet there. But what if people were honest about Colombia? What they talk about the fact that, this is a poverty-stricken country, that a lot of these women don't want to be doing this. And if they don't want to be doing this, why are they doing it? Let's talk about that. And if you're going to deal with that, you're going to the dark zone. You're going to the red zone there. And if you do that, you put your life on the line. Let's talk about the fact that, like what the locals told me there, that is more peligroso there, which means very dangerous. You don't hear YouTubers saying, they say, oh no, it's how you move. Bullshit. I've talked to the locals. I've been to Medellin. I've been to Bogota. I've been to Cali. I've been to Cartagena. Ain't no local told me that country is safe and is how you move. They told you that, yeah, you need to be mindful of where you go to is better in Poblado, but still it can be dicey. Don't mess with hoes. Don't do drugs. Don't be out any time of night. You can't walk out around any time of night. Don't wear jewelry. These guys are like, be mindful of the girl you're dealing with. You need to learn Spanish. These guys are saying, oh, well, if you grew up in the hood, you know how to, bro. All right, listen. I grew up around the hood. I grew up around the streets. I did not grow up in the streets. But anybody that's grown up around that environment knows one thing is for certain. You don't want to go back to that type of environment. You don't want to be putting yourself in harm's way. That's just common sense. And to promote that, like, because they're beautiful, which a lot of women are certainly enhanced, to promote that, like, oh no, it's no problem. It's good to go. You don't have nothing to worry about. Just don't do nothing stupid. Bro, it's more than that. On my reconnaissance training, told me that, yo, and I'm not a guy that's going there dealing with or looking for hoes. Even for me, that was a super dangerous country. That's probably the most dangerous country I've been to. More so than even the African country that I'm about to talk about. Now let's go back to Africa. Imagine if people talked about that. They talk about the fact, like Colombia, they're pretty, but it's dangerous. And they was honest about it. Now, what if they talk about Africa that is a beautiful country, a lot of natural resources, safaris, beautiful landscapes, ancient history, ancient languages, Swahili, Wolof, in Senegal region, the world of the country, the continent rather, Swahili to the far east, the different customs and styles of clothing, harkening back to antiquity. They talked about that, but they also talked about, the stuff that's not sweet. You would attract more people to Africa. Okay, scholars say, oh, it's this, it's that, you gotta worry about, and then you make a rebuttal about that. That's cool, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about that and challenge it all the way, full force. Now, when you're challenging the so-called negatives, you can then be like, okay, this is what you got to look out for. But Africa is rich in history. Africa has a lot of culture. There's a lot of children that can use your help, like the Kibera slums. I shout out to a woman named Irene. She created a program called the Kibera Pride initiative. It's a program that helps disadvantaged children that have been through it, the worst of the worst, in the Kibera slums in near Nairobi, Kenya. In Nairobi, Kenya, these kids sometimes don't have a bite to eat. They don't have any parents, nobody looking out for them. But you, this African American, this black man from UK or France, instead of walking around thinking that you are the least protected, which ladies in those part of the world, as black people in the United States of America and UK and France, you are not the least protected. Okay, you can then take that energy of anger, sometimes self-hate, and bring it back to the Kibera slums and help out the kids in the Kibera Pride initiative program, the children's home. They recently had a arson. 3 times there's been someone burning down the home, and the kids don't have proper bedding, proper food to eat. You, black woman, black man, can go back and help out those people. In the description box, I'll put the information that you can use to help donate to these children. And I'll also link to the videos that I posted several months ago about the Kibera Children's Home and the need that these young babies have for a better life and a better future. As an African American man and woman, you can go back, get rid of the anger, get rid of the pissed off energy you have about not being accepted. That many of us have not being accepted in a culture that we build. And instead bring it back home. Bring it back home. Bring those resources back home and help out somebody less fortunate than you. Because your worst point is someone's blessing. So something to think about. Cut the resting bitch face and help out somebody that can use that help. And talk about that stuff. Talk about that. Talk about, like, trying to get my thoughts together. Talk about, the young ladies using proper contraception, right? In Africa. There's a lot of, I'm near the DC area, there's a lot of educated black women. Take that energy that you got and go back to Africa. Take a pilgrimage like I did to Senegal. Take it to do a blood test, do a DNA test, figure out where you're from, and take it. Once you figure out what country you're from, take a trip back to Africa and support the locals there. What a way to combat white supremacy and racism, right? What a way to combat deadbeat black men that are pussies and don't want to take care of their kids. What a way to combat self-hate, to show love for yourself by making a trip back home to the motherland. That is an awesome way to show love, right? Mauritania is a country in West Africa. One of the few countries on the planet still has slavery. It's slave black women. That's the least protected. That's the least protected right there. You could go back there. If you could go, or you could donate to the local children's programs there to help out the Islamic young ladies that's there. They could use your support. Really help out the showcase that real black girl magic by helping those people out, because they really dealing with it. That's dealing with it. Kids that don't got no proper shoes, don't have any shoes, walking barefoot. This is what you could do. Let's talk about it. Let's not just say, oh, he's only talking about the negative. Let's just talk solely about the positive. You ever talk to a lot of Africans in America or the UK? They told me, ain't sweet in Africa, ain't sweet in Ghana, ain't sweet in Accra. That's where a lot of y'all African Americans go to, right? Some African Americans, they go there for bad stuff. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how African Americans, they can't get treated with no respect in America, right? So they can't walk around like, oh, I run things in America, because a lot of the white supremacists would shut that down. So a lot of the black men, a lot of the black women, they go to places like Accra, Ghana, W.E.B. Du Bois Museum, and they hold their nose up at the local black people. And I mean, it's nothing special about them. They saved up for 6 to 9 months cleaning hotel rooms so they could get to Accra, Ghana. And then they bring this new agenda, this new nasty agenda of I got mine, you got yours, to Africa, and try to hoard and lord over the Africans. Where did that mindset come from? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about light skin versus dark skin. Let's talk about how, the Willie Lynch letter and how it was promoted in Hispaniola for light skin versus dark skin. Why do you think Haitians hate this so? I mean, why do you think Dominicans hate being black so much? Let's talk about the poison that was brought to that island, so where the people would be divided from their own grandmothers and grandfathers, their own cousins, simply because they're dark skinned on the left side of the island. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the propaganda. Let's talk about how that propaganda is promoted in Africa, the skin bleaching. In West Africa, you got centers in Senegal where the women are getting skin cancer because they bleaching their skin so much. And the men out here promoting them to bleach their skin. It's just a psychological damage that they got, just like in Asia, just like all throughout Asia, where the women are bleaching their skin. It's ridiculous crap. 2024, bleaching your skin is not normal, so they can be white. And the white people, they write articles in the NIH in Australia talking about how crazy and loony the Asian people are for doing that. Why, what the hell? Come on, man. Man up, woman up. Like, that's not cool, bro. Like, that's weird. And that happens in Africa. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about in South Africa, while it's real off GDP wise, who's winning there? The descendants of racist white people, like the middleweight champion for the UFC, DDP, his ancestors and him. He talks about black people being united. No, nigga, no, but people ain't united there. The white people, like the redneck white guy. What's the guy name? He was the former middleweight champion. He beat Israel Adesanya. Sean Strickland. He talked about, I went to South Africa. It was only the white people doing good and the black people were living in the shit. This is a redneck white guy saying this. Let's talk about it, man. Stop lying. Stop pretending. Black people are doing bad, man, in their own country. Apartheid still goes on. And you got these liars, the current middleweight champion, pretending like the shit don't go on. You know what I mean? Like that kind of crap. Let's talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, it's going to keep going on. It's going to keep going on. I'm not saying like whine about it. Like the African Renaissance statue promotes. It's taking full accountability for your position in life and making the most of it, and no victim mentality. And what better way to not show no victim mentality, but to acknowledge the past, the present, and where you want to go in the future. These things got to be acknowledged, man. And I made this video because I wanted to talk on those key points. I want to talk about the poverty issue. I want to talk about the HIV issue. I wanted to talk about some historical points that I spoke on. I want to talk about to this day that you still have Africans being lorded over by evil people from West Europe for their sick, diabolical pleasure. First time was in Tanzania. First time in Africa. Loony white Russian woman and Ukrainian woman try to start fighting me. Now these women, they walk around pretending somebody's going to rape them and somebody's going to creep on them. So you go to Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, you figure they don't like us, so let me just go somewhere where there shouldn't be them. Lo and behold, white woman, the whitest of white woman, starting shit for shits and giggles. Now these people, they on a vacation and they see a black guy and they want to prove that they're so superior over them because they think they're above God. They think they can lie to God and say, you know what, I'm better than you too. So then they want to run around starting fights with people. I asked one white guy in the line, I came to Africa. You say don't deal with your women. And what's up with that? The white guy, he looking at me like, bro, I don't know. I mean, they crazy. You know, let's talk about that. And the reason you talk about that, right? I think Phil from, I forgot the popular YouTube channel. He runs a black informative channel. He talked about like even in the motherland, you're trying to get away from the hate, and then there they are. Lo and behold, there they are, right? By talking about that stuff, you can then be like, well, why are these white people? Why are all these Indian white people, the racist Indian people? India, which has the second highest rate of STD HIV in the whole planet, but they're better than other people. Let's talk about why they're in East Africa. Let's talk about why these white people in Africa, all throughout Africa. Let's talk about why the Chinese are in Africa. You know, I was not too long ago in Asia, and I was in Asia, and one person I was talking to, they were from China. They was talking about, yeah, I mean, when we're taking over places, we put people in debt, you know, so that we can take over it. Let's talk about that. Why that going on in Africa? You know, let's talk about the currency issue there, right? You know, what's going on with some of the superpowers now on the planet there, and with some of the West African countries who's giving up the franc, right? Burkina Faso, right? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about it all, right? That's the point of this video. Let's talk about it all. Let's not just talk about one part of things. Let's not just talk about, you know, what is fancy. And, you know, I know I'm a promoter of, you know, just talking about parties. A lot of my videos are about nightlife, right? In different places, but it's good to talk about other important matters, right? Some people would say this kind of conversation, dialogue, and discourse, if you will, is dry. However, be that as it may, it is very informative, and it sparks the mind to look into and be inquisitive, to look into other more important matters, pertinent matters with regards to the world and current events and so forth. Let's talk about the humanitarian aid that goes on in Africa by a lot of church groups, white church groups, black church groups. Let's talk about the NGOs that go on and what's their main purpose, their real purpose of being here, right? Let's talk about all of that and talk about how we as passport bros, we as black men that had way more opportunities than our fathers had. I mean, think about it. The purpose of this whole group, this whole movement, right? These black men traveling, these men traveling, right? It really started out for a lot of people, you know, coming from humble beginnings and serving in the United States military decades upon decades ago. And they left this small town, Kansas and Baltimore and Chicago and Indiana, and they joined the service. They answered the call, and then they went overseas and they saw in Asia how much better the Asian people treated them, the Asian women treated them. They got to actually deal with some real femininity instead of an entitled woman whining and complaining about her problems, despite men dying for her right to vote and dying for everything that she has now. Yet they're promoting this "I hate men" movement in the West, right? Men got to see that in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And it to now where you see it, particularly like as a black man, speaking from my experience in the African-American community, where the woman has been just warped and mind fucked to think that she should compete against men, which is completely un-African and most importantly illogical, right? Especially based off of the shape of the sex organs and then just the history of the dynamics of interaction between man and women planet-wide. This birthed this whole movement to travel. And in this travel, it's good to have the fun, right? That's talked about ad nausea on the YouTube manosphere, right? Women, men, dynamics. But there's also other important endeavors to engage in, especially being a black person, learning about your lineage, learn about where you come from. Your history didn't start 500 years on some slave ship, right? It predates that. It predates that. you had languages, you had a name of your own, you had an Islamic name before, perhaps if you're descending from West Africa, maybe you had a name that was origin from that part of the world. It's good and necessary to know that part of history, right? Know, perhaps you can learn about what tribe you're from. I believe the great, amazing UK actor Idris Abba, he's done a lot of different, lot of really great movies. One movie I like in particular, I'm an action buff. He played a movie with The Rock and Jonathan Stamos, I believe his name is, and Hobbs Shaw, where he was the main villain. He said the famous line, "I'm the Black Superman." Be that as it may, he went back to, I believe, Ghana, and he learned about his history, if you will, and became a part of a tribe there. You could engage in something like that. That's way better than going somewhere like the Dominican Republic, i.e., the black people that hate being black due to the ill teaching of the Willie Lynch syndrome. That's why they like that, right? They don't talk about that part of history. And then the evil teachings of Trulio and other diabolical maniacs. That's going to back to Ghana, back to the motherland, learn about history. That's better than going to trick off on self-hating women or women that have been taken advantage of in the most horrible way that you maybe don't even know about. Hence, they engage in that kind of behavior in Sasua. Like, let's transcend that, right? Now, these are our brothers and sisters. Why is, sex is fun, sex is natural, but we want to do it in a healthy, safe way, and promoting each other to be mindful of that, right? Is nothing more beautiful than being between the connection that a man and woman can have, not just on the lower level, but on a higher level, right? That's really what it's all about. I mean, some people, even throughout all the major monolithic religions, Buddhism and so forth, theorize that the whole purpose of reincarnation, or of our purpose on this planet, is to engage to a frequency of love, which they say is the highest form of energy on this planet. And I think that when one discovers and searches for a higher love, and that doesn't have to be just between, pursuing girls. That can be like love of your fellow man, of the earth, of your ancestors, going back to the motherland, of honoring, despite it all, right? To learning more about who you are. Talk about love, talk about being proud, talk about being strong. That's the strong man. That's what it's about, right? That's what it's about. And I think that we got to talk about all those little aspects. There's a YouTuber, is a YouTube channel called Search to Uhuru, Uhuru, and gentleman, he talks about in his some of his opening videos, he talks about the manifestation of his channel. And part of that was going back to Africa to find out who he was, right? To find out who he was, man. I tell you, like, when you're embarking on that journey, you put yourself through different trials and tribulations, you're challenging yourself, you really get to learn who you are, right? And, like, chasing girls is really not something that's like a fruitful endeavor. I mean, most of the time you're giving up energy more than you're gaining energy. And so, but it can be fun sometimes, but chasing, I don't know, chasing is that much fun, but attracting through research, attracting through travel, attracting through adventurous voyages, that is a cool experience. I've been to a number, speaking on testimony, I was in Mexico one time, and like I read about these colossal stoneheads. It was several years ago, and it was 17 in all, discovered in the 1860s in Mexico, particularly in the states, Tabasco in Mexico, and 17 in all. And the people, they was from this group called the Omacas, and they were a prehistoric, back to antiquity group of people who many theorize to be African in origin because of their big lips and noses and so forth, the African features, Africanoid features, if you will, for lack of a better word. So I was like, man, no one goes to Tabasco in Mexico. There's nothing there. But for me, it was something there. it was a way to find out more who I am in person by discovering one of the 17 colossal stoneheads at the museums called Venta de Museo in Villahermosa, Tabasco. I traveled all the way through Mexico, just the camp through the Quintana Roo, all the way to Tabasco just to get there, man. And wow, that was worth the experience just to go to that museum and to see that part of African history. Most people don't even know that when you go to that part of Mexico, you got people looking like Drake walking around Tabasco. Now, it's clear that the people have African origins. And, when you think of Mexico, you think of like maybe shorter people, indigenous looking people, all the way to very light, like Canelo Alvarez, the great Mexican boxer. But there's also another side. There's a black side. And by challenging yourself to think outside the box, think outside the Cancuns and the Playa del Carmen's and the Tulums of the world, the Los Cabos of the world, and really, really dive deep into the different aspects of culture that are entrenched in these societies, you really can, in effect, learn about more who you are, right? And that is something really, really cool. The girls, having a beautiful woman on your arm and intimacy with her, that's an amazing experience. I think every man should do that, right? But also, there's more to life than that, right? There's helping out your fellow mankind. There's learning about who you are. There's travel, there's adventure, there's voyage, there's research, there's just tranquility, being tranquilo, right? They say in the Spanish language, right? There's that aspect, and that's a cool aspect of living. And I think that brothers should embrace that, because by embracing that, you go past the capping of things are one way, this race is that way, this group is that way. It's all about how you move. There's only one or two things you need to know about, and then you start expanding your consciousness and you seeing that we're all one, a symbiotic connection between humankind, man and woman, the air we breathe, the land we walk on, the other creatures on the planet. You start seeing the symbiotic connection that your ancestors saw, that they all knew that we was in this circle of life, that we were all one, essentially. You end the duality, you end the whole, you end as you in effect, you end the duality that you're looking to escape from in the West, and you bring yourself forward into the connectedness, oneness that we are all truly a part of. And that's a dope, cool experience. Think about it. When you go to Latin America, they say the Latin affection, but where's that whole the Latin affection derived from, right? That derives from a desire to be connected with oneself through one's family, through one's neighbors, through one's cohorts. Something clearly missing in the individualistic inspired Western culture, particularly like the United States of America, where if your car get broken down, you call AAA. Whereas in a lot of these communities, you got to lean on your fellow neighbor, your fellow man or woman to get by, which brings about a deeper bond and connection with others. It just happens organically and naturally. Whereas in the West, you're not seeing that. Oh, people are like, losing their shit off of the fact that their elbow bumps into somebody, dumb stuff, right? Or that, women are crying about rape culture and they have so many avenues to prevent rape, right? Let's be real, right? Imagine being an Afghan woman in Afghanistan and you tell me how bad your days are as an American woman, but you walking around with a resting bitch face. So, this is something to think about, right? It's something really, really to think about. I was in Thailand one time. I'm going off a little bit of tangent now, but it really all goes back to the centerpiece of this conversation. I was in Thailand and I was with a young lady, and I saw an older woman, and she was just selling firecrackers. She had to be in her 70s. She told me she was 70 years old. And, I gave her just 100 baht, and she just bowed. I gave her 200 baht. Actually, I gave her let me give you 200. She bowed. She was like, thank you. And I asked the young lady I was with, do they have welfare system here for the older woman that's out here at night selling, Firecracker, she's like, no, there's no welfare system here. And look how appreciative she was of that. Can't even get that from your own people in the States. You can get it from a Thai woman. So, like it's like those kind of experiences you appreciate. Because not because I got anything from the woman. I didn't take anything from I didn't want anything she was selling. I just wanted to give. But because the gratitude that was shown between two sentient beings that you might not even get in the West, because so many people got the head up their ass, right? Or pooping in beds like what Johnny Depp had to deal with, or having entanglements like Will Smith had to deal with, that kind of nonsense, right? No respect, right? And you go somewhere and you get respect, and you're like, wow, man, that is cool. Wow, man, I want to integrate with this culture, right? Like the white guys that I met in the military told me that, their women are crazy, right? When I was overseas 10 plus years ago. And they told me they were entitled and that they made no sense and they're angry for the most laughable matters. Or like a lot of the brothers talk about in the Passport Bro group about the sister girls, having this entitlement. When any brother that's traveled the world knows that, let's look at the history. Look at, being put on a ship like a sardine, or being forced to have sex with their slave master at 14, 13 years old, like Sally did with Thomas Jefferson. And now you come to this point where, people are like saying hi is such a difficult thing, right? Different, something different, or back in the Jim Crow era where your grandma could get lynched for nothing, right? So it's one of those things where, it helps you see the bigger picture. Because if you're in this shit, you start thinking, as a man, you got it bad, right? Because now it's not just the women that live in La La Land. It's the men, too. The black men in America living in La La Land. They think they got it bad. How? Because you're not accepted. Because a bunch of self-hating people don't like you. Because some people from Asia that bleach their skin and don't even like themselves don't like you. Because you're dealing with some migrants that, their country in South America essentially going to hell, and they don't like you, or they take advantage of you, or some white people who, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors for them. They're not doing good. You think you got it bad. I'm not saying, everybody's situation is different. You never know, but you got a welfare system. Unlike that Thai woman, you got different provisions to help you out, right? You got different opportunities. You got college. Now, one thing a lot of countries overseas, they got free school where we don't have free school. But sometimes to get that free schooling in those countries, you got to test into that free program. But now our college system is pretty ass. But you have an opportunity to go advance yourself. You can, if college not your thing, you got vocational programs. Which is a form of college or higher learning, but you have those options. You have the military. You can get in public service. You have opportunities in America. Socially, yeah, the people are messed up. I mean, when neighbors don't talk to neighbors, like I hinted to, earlier in the video, when people are, upset with one another because their elbow bumps into another, when they're antsy and angry because it takes 5 minutes to get somewhere, where, in other places it takes 2 hours to get somewhere. You got African kids walking 5-10 miles each day to go to school because they know the benefit of that opportunity that they can get by going to school. And you're crying about, some useless woman who has $100,000 student loan debt doesn't want to date you in Washington, D.C. And she acting like she's better than you, but you don't have no student loan debt, sir. You can travel the world. What you angry about? You start seeing the symbiotic connection of human beings. You start seeing that you're capping, that you need to stop the cap and really look at what you got to be thankful for. You know what I'm saying, man? Like that, God gives us so much, man. He gives us so much. Whatever you believe in, for me, without a doubt, there's a higher power, right? I mean, the sun, the moon, the stars. I mean, that didn't come out of nowhere, right? It had to come from someone, right? You believe in Elohim, the Elohims. You believe in God Himself. What you call Him? If you call Him God, Jesus Christ, Yahweh, Allah. If you're into Buddhism, you believe in the teachings of the Lord Buddha. All these faiths, they talk about one of the centerpieces of the value system is to be grateful. The story of Job, Abraham, the first Buddha, when we saw the suffering in southern India, a black man, by the way. I know in that part of the world they don't like being black, which is sad, and they make jokes about black people, and then they go to worship at temples of statues of black men, clearly because they have coarse hair. But be that as it may, he saw the suffering of the people out of his kingdom, and he said, it got to be something more to life than just being rich and having other people suffer. I got to go help out. I'm blessed. How can I bless others? How can I see that we're all one and reach a higher state, a state of nirvana, right? Or as I talked about earlier in the video, a state of love, right? Travel helps with that. Travel helps with really learning about who you are, whether it's a voyage or pilgrimage back to the motherland, a DNA test that inspires us to figure out who you really are. Because your name really an English name? Is it really a French name? Let's find out what I really am, right? Let's find all of that out. And that travel gives you that opportunity. Travel gives you the opportunity to see the blessing that you have being a United States American citizen, all the blessings that America gives you, right? And to take advantage of that in a positive, respectful manner, not going to engage in debauchery. I mean, if you done that, whatever, we're all human, right? No, none of us ain't no saints, right? That's why we're here. But the transcend that and go for a higher love. Because really, at the end of the day, if you're a brother, yeah, you want some good times and so forth, but really at the end of the day, is that all you want? I mean, what inspires you to make these videos talking about the women behavior, right? The lack of love that they show you. Show yourself some love, man. Show yourself some love. Let's show each other some love. Let's be honest with one another. Let's talk about the good of Africa, but let's talk about the not so good of Africa. Let's talk about the bad of the Western women and the delusion and grandeur that they clearly suffer under. But let's talk about the delusion and grandeur that we as brothers suffer under. Let's talk about how we as men can be better men each and every single day, to challenge ourselves, to check ourselves when we acting up. If you see one guy, you see a brother, he out of shape, bro, like, listen, well, we got to go hit the gym. Instead of like going to the nightclub, instead of going to Mavs in Rio de Janeiro, let's go to the gyms. It's a big fitness culture in Rio de Janeiro. We can go hiking. We can instead of taking the trolley up to the Christ the Redeemer, we can figure out a way to walk up the Christ the Redeemer. We can really better ourselves and really build a connection of strong bond between brothers. We can then help out the blacks there that are suffering. In Brazil, there's a lot of black people not doing good. I saw it when I went to Carnival in February. The white people are doing good. They eating good off the hog, but the black people, they work the menial jobs. They the ones that created the culture. They created samba. They created that. You see all these people dancing around Pedro del Sol, but then they treat the black people like shit. But they dance to the music that the black man created and black woman created. They telling people that, oh, we're colorblind, but every time, if you're a black American, several YouTubers talk about it. I experienced it when driving through Barra de Juco and coming near or around the favelas. The police stop you, and the driver tells them that you're American, so that gives you a clean slate, so you don't have to deal with nothing. But imagine if you was a Brazilian, you weren't an American. What kind of horrors would you might have to deal with from the cops? Let's talk about, the women are beautiful, but a lot of men are paying for sex there. Let's talk about the fact that a lot of these girls are selling themselves. And let's talk about how they only make $400 a month. And that, we can maybe promote these young African women, African descendant women from the Angola tribe, to transcend that low frequency level and to be better women. Let's talk about how instead of just going there to partying, we looking for ways to help and bridge the gap between blacks in America and blacks in Brazil, not coming in with that holier than thou attitude, or I'm better than you. or paying for women, yo. Like, let's talk about language exchange classes and how you can learn Portuguese, or how you can practice your Espanol, and you can really build bonds between other brothers and sisters that were dropped off in places that you weren't dropped off, whether that's in the Caribbean, whether that's in Latin America, and whether that's in the United States of America. Let's talk about it. You don't like one spot, go to another spot. The world is your oyster. But with that, embrace the truth. Stop the cap. All right, till next time. Peace.